With a lot of Spurs fans complaining about Daniel Levy, ENIC, and their lack of spending down the years, perhaps it's a surprise that they sit atop of the Premier League net spend table. Is it about spending? Or is it about having spent badly? Meanwhile, reports continue that we're looking to bring in even more players this window, and Chelsea continue their role as the league's laughingstock by adding more to their ginormous squad. All this and more news on today's episode of Premier League Transfer Talk with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for watching and tuning in. As ever, please do press that like button. It really helps this video get seen by more people. And do subscribe to the channel if you don't already for daily Tottenham news and Premier League transfer news during this window. Also, you can become a member, just £1 a month. All the details in the description box below. But let's get started, and as ever, with my beloved Spurs. According to Paul O'Keefe, as well as a new backup goalkeeper, Spurs are looking to still potentially sign a defender and a midfielder this window. I think a lot of that will depend on who else we can get out of the door, and I'll talk a little bit more about the list of outgoings in a second. But who do you want to see us go for? If it's right that we're looking to sign a defender and a midfielder, as well as potentially a backup goalkeeper, but I assume that will be kind of a young player. We were linked yesterday, of course, with the young Italian Martinelli. I assume it'll be a young player who will be our kind of backup goalkeeper, with potentially Fraser Forster, I guess, staying as that third goalkeeper in the way that Scott Carson does at Manchester City. He's been there for like a decade and has never really played a game. I envisage Fraser Forster staying at the club as kind of experience, almost more on a coaching level, as that third goalkeeper. But in terms of a defender and a midfielder, who would you like to see us go for? Let me know in the comments. Do you think Johan Lange has another ace up his sleeve like he did with Wilson Odobert? Someone coming in that we just do not expect. And if that's the case, maybe have a look around the Premier League, kind of lower reaches of the Premier League, maybe clubs who got relegated last season or top end of the Championship in terms of young, exciting talent who fits the attributes that Ange Postecoglou is looking for. And let me know in the comments who you would like to see us get through the door. Meanwhile, as I mentioned in the opening there, how do you feel about the money that we've spent this window? The reason I ask is because Man United and Tottenham lead the way for net spend among Premier League clubs this transfer window, with around £104 million spent. Eric Ten Hag's side have almost even matched the very top spenders, Chelsea, for total spend, but have also recouped £51 million with selling, unfortunately, Mason Greenwood, where they got £26 million for him, and the likes of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who they got £15 million for. Spurs, of course, are towards the top of that net spend table because they haven't been as successful at getting big transfer fees for any of their departures. But as I said, I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But I want to really ask you guys, let me know in the comments, how do you feel about the way Tottenham have spent their money over the past few years? I think over the past kind of 4 or 5 years, despite all of the complaints about ENIC and Daniel Levy from Tottenham fans, they're actually in the top 3 or 4 in terms of net spend, how much they've spent in the Premier League. So is it really about money spent, or is it actually about the way they've spent that money? Because you'd have to say, wouldn't you, that under Paratici, before Johan Lange came in, we actually made some really good signings, didn't we? I think everyone kind of agrees with that. And I think Lange's kind of continued that. I think everyone likes Bergvall. Everyone likes Archie Gray. I think we're kind of excited about the money we've spent in terms of the young, hungry players. Obviously, we'll still see how Dominic Solanke does, but I was impressed with his first performance. It's a shame he missed a few chances, but let's not forget that's his first game in a long time. He hasn't played much football at all and hadn't trained with the group. But is your complaint, if you are someone who doesn't like Daniel Levy and ENIC, is your actual complaint about the way the scouts have scouted and the way that we've pulled the trigger on big money signings? I guess I'm talking about the likes of Ndombele and Lo Celso and those kind of big money signings. And as a result, can you see why Tottenham are maybe now more likely to engage in buying young players with potential sell-on fees who can grow with the club and grow with a kind of similar age group, rather than kind of splashing big in the way that we did with Ndombele and Lo Celso, players who've never played in the Premier League and maybe as a result haven't really flourished? Just interested to know what you think. Let's have a little chat in the comments about it. as I mentioned, I just want to talk a little bit about the outgoings this summer from Spurs. I'm sure you won't remember this, but at the back end of last season, after the last game, as we went into pre-season, I made a list of the players that I thought Tottenham would look to sell or listen to offers for from this summer. And the players that I had on that list who have left the club are as follows: Oliver Skipp, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Emerson Royal, Ryan Sessegnon, Japhet Tanganga, Tanguy Ndombele, and Joe Rodon. That's 8 players. Now, from the remaining players on that list, the following are still unsold or haven't been released from the club. That is Gio Lo Celso, Fraser Forster, Manor Solomon, Ben Davis, Austin and Whiteman, the keepers, Sergio Reguilon, and Jed Spence. My prediction is that by the end of this transfer window, so just in a couple of weeks' time, Gio Lo Celso, Manor Solomon, and Sergio Reguilon will have left the club, either permanently or on season-long loan deals. And that would mean 11 of the list that I predicted would leave the club will have left the club. I also suggest that potentially Ben Davis and maybe a loan deal for Whiteman or Austin could happen. That's if we bring in another goalkeeper. Perhaps both goalkeepers go on loan if we do bring in another reserve goalkeeper. So how do you feel about the outgoings? I personally think it's all of those outgoings, 11 at the minimum is what I'm predicting by the end of this window, that is allowing us to bring in more players than maybe we expected. I know that it was only maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that everyone was absolutely panicking because we hadn't really brought anyone in other than Archie Gray. But I've said all along that I think it's about, can we free up the wage bill? Can we free up the squad to then get players in that suit Ange Postecoglou? And I think we're doing that. The other thing to talk about is, of course, on that list that I had at the beginning was Jed Spence as someone I predicted would leave, but he really has completed his redemption arc and I think will remain at the club now. And perhaps with Pedro Porro looking like he's nursing an ankle injury, maybe Jed Spence will get his first, what I think is his first Premier League start for Spurs. Certainly he hasn't had many Premier League starts for Spurs at the weekend against Everton, and I'll be excited to see him play in that right back role. However, of course, if that is the fact, we will miss Pedro Porro because he is an unbelievable player. Not surprisingly, if you're into fancy Premier League, which I have to say I'm not really, but I do read a lot about how many players have Porro in their fancy Premier League team because he is such a goal threat. Meanwhile, some more Spurs news. On Monday evening, Alejo Valise, obviously on loan from Spurs, he started for Espanyol. He played the first 70 minutes of the game as they lost 1-0 against Real Valladolid. Easy for me to say. Real Valladolid. He did get a nose injury during that time. I think Alejo Valise, maybe more than anyone I've ever seen pull on a Spurs shirt or any football shirt, just loves to get himself injured. He had 1 shot on target, 30 touches in the game, 1 touch in the opposition box. He provided 3 passes into the final third. He was offside once and made 9 out of 15 accurate passes. He was fouled twice. Be interesting to see. I mean, I'm glad that Valise is starting. That's good because obviously he went to Sevilla last year and didn't get any game time at all. I mean, how do you feel about Valise going on loan to Spain? It's good that he's getting minutes, but couldn't we have found him like a championship side that he could have played for to get some kind of experience of the real rough and tumble of English football? I feel like that would have made more sense, but good that he got some minutes. Let's hope he continues to start and can get some goals under his belt. Obviously, I gave my match reaction to the Leicester draw, the disappointing Leicester draw in yesterday's video, but here's some more player reaction from the Leicester game. Most of these are from the players' social media accounts, so I ask you, as I read these out, try and spot the one Tottenham player who I think maybe does actually control his own social media. So Son Heung-min said, you have to be more clinical. It was very frustrating. I mean, I completely agree. And to be fair to Sonny, I think he's allowed to say that, not only because he was captain, but also he didn't really have any chances whatsoever that I can remember. He was kind of more on the periphery of things with some good link-up play on the left with Madison, Destiny Udogie and the like. But we need to get Sonny into more positions where he can score. Obviously, that is less likely when we play teams who kind of play 11 behind the ball as Leicester did, but that's going to happen a lot this season, so we have to find ways. Christian Romero said, we're back again. We deserved much more. Keep improving. This is just starting. All together, always. Yeah, like I said, pretty sure that was a social media PR person writing that, but, you know, I see what he's saying. Did we deserve much more? I mean, yes, in terms of the first half, we should have been 3 or 4-0 up, but in terms of the second half, in games like that, you could easily see a way that Leicester could have won that game in that kind of 15-minute spell when they were on top. Guillermo Vicario said reset and ready to go again on Saturday, so not a great deal there from Vicario. Dominic Solanke said it was great to play in front of the fans. Disappointed not to get the 3 points. The next game is an opportunity to put things right. I completely agree. I'm hoping that it's a good time to play Everton. They got spanked by Brighton at the weekend. Obviously, Brighton plays some really beautiful football, kind of similar to what Spurs do. However, Everton did have a couple of chances early on, probably should have scored. But hopefully their confidence is a little bit in doubt as they come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Last year they came to Spurs under Sean Dyche and actually played really beautifully. A very kind of un-Sean Dyche-like performance, played some really good football and were very unlucky not to go away with a win. Meanwhile, Lucas Bergvall said, happy to make my Premier League debut and thank you for your support. Not the result we wanted, but on to the next one. Bergvall's got his social media sorted. And now maybe the one who I think potentially might control his own social media a bit more, James Madison. The Premier League is back. Not the result we wanted, but positives to take, and important, we stay in a good mindset with a long season ahead. Amazing feeling to be back at the King Power Stadium. Thank you for the reception from those who clapped my name. Honestly means a lot to me and my family because Leicester is and always will be special to me. Good luck for the season. Let me know, guys, what you thought of James Madison's performance. I thought he looked back to his best, although I've listened to a lot of the Spurs podcasts since the game, and I'm actually in agreement with quite a few people who suggest that when things got a little bit tough and Leicester scored that goal and we lost our heads for the next 10-15 minutes, James Madison was a good example of that. It's not that he didn't try and get on the ball more, but he kept giving the ball away. And we just need in those moments our more experienced heads to really understand what is important. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think we needed someone to almost go down just for a couple of minutes, say they're injured, and just let the team maybe go and have a word with Ange or have a word with each other and say what is important in these 5-10 minutes. It's that we don't give the ball away. We keep control of the ball. Don't try and do anything too difficult and just let the crowd simmer down because the Leicester fans were on our backs at that point and we were not very impressive. And although I thought Madison had an excellent game and it bodes really well for the future, I just think we needed his experience, Romero's experience, Sonny's experience in that moment to really get the crowd simmered down, keep the ball a little bit and get Leicester chasing shadows. Hopefully we will learn from that. Meanwhile, Madis has come out with some quotes this week about how he felt about missing out on Gareth Southgate's England team for the European Championships. He said the following: I struggled to find the consistency in the second half of last season post the injury. It's always about how you deal with setbacks. I was devastated to miss out on the Euros, but my network around me, my dad especially, he would never let me dwell on that and let it define me. I'm hungry this season to do well, to use it as motivation, to remind me that I can be at that level. He said, you have no choice but to accept the decision. You can't change it once it's happened. I was disappointed, but Gareth's a great man. He explained his reasons. It was never personal. We have a great relationship. I messaged him not long ago to congratulate him on his England managerial career and wished him well. There's no hatred towards that. I knew it was a business decision, which he thought was best for the team, no doubt about that. I didn't agree with him though. I felt I could have brought something to the squad, but that's all in the past now and my focus is to just have a good season. I love that from Madders, feet on the ground, dealing with the disappointment, going back to family and understanding really what it's about, not holding a grudge. You see a lot of players talking in the press, especially like ex-players now, who talk about holding grudges. I'm thinking about Matt Le Tissier and Glenn Hoddle actually. I saw an interview with Matt Le Tissier recently where he holds a grudge against Glenn Hoddle for not talking to him properly or in a way that he deemed fit at a breakfast on a golf day. Like recently, like in the last few years when it was like 25 years since Glenn Hoddle upset Matt Le Tissier when he was manager of Southampton. It's completely ridiculous to hold grudges like that. And I'm very impressed with James Madison that he understood the position that Gareth Southgate was in. He can't take everyone. England were blessed with a really exceptional squad, particularly in the attacking midfield areas. And I think in reality, James Madison was right. He didn't get his rhythm back after the injury last season. He's been able to have a really good break in the summer, and now he's come back to Spurs. And certainly in terms of that first 60 minutes of the Leicester game, I thought he looked back to somewhere near his best, wanting to get on the ball all the time, manipulating the ball with the inside and outside of his foot, finding little through balls, finding little spaces and triangles, just what we love about James Madison. So I'm excited to see him at home against Everton at the weekend. And like I said yesterday, I just want him to score one of his free kicks. I think it's one of those that we need to see because we haven't scored a free kick in such a long time. And also it'll get his confidence right back up there. Meanwhile, Harry Redknapp has given some quotes on what he thinks we have in an incredibly exciting young player, Archie Gray. Harry, our former manager, said the following. He said, "Yeah, it was good to see him get a chance," meaning against Leicester. "I don't know a lot about him, but certainly I watched him quite a bit last year. He's a proper player, isn't he? He's got a bit of pedigree as well. I think he'll be a big success at Tottenham. I bet he's a great lad. You only have to look at him. He'll be professional. He'll be brought up right. He looks the real deal to me. I think he's going to be a top player for Spurs." Now, I don't disagree with Harry Redknapp at all. I really like the look of Archie Gray. I think he's technically a wonderful footballer, especially for an 18-year-old. He's also a big boy. He probably hasn't stopped growing either. He's a bit of he could turn into a bit of a man mountain. He's already very tall, but also quite filled out for his age. And I think he could fill out even some more, which will be good because you really need to be strong in the Premier League. But even in that little cameo off the bench against Leicester, I thought he showed some really quick feet. He's obviously very positionally aware and versatile, which of course Ange Postecoglou loves, and can fit in that right back role, that centre midfield role, and maybe even sometime down the road, maybe in Europa League games or Carabao Cup games at centre back if needed. Obviously, we talked at the top of the show the potential that we might look for another defender. I don't know, maybe between Ben Davies and Archie Gray, they can fill in as that fourth centre back if needed. I wanted to ask you one more thing as well, actually. You know, with the way that a lot of the big teams, Man City and Arsenal in particular, now play kind of 3 or 4 centre-backs across their back line, would any of you be tempted to suggest at some point in games where we need to make sure we don't concede as many goals as we have been, would you be tempted to play Van de Ven in that left-back role alongside Dragoshin and Romero, and then maybe, you know, have less of an attacking threat on the left-hand side? Or would you always want to play Destiny Udogie? My instinct is to always play Destiny Udogie because I just think he's so brilliant going forward. A lot of you said in the comments you weren't impressed with his performance against Leicester yesterday, but I thought considering how few games he's played in the last 6 months and because of his injury, he was very impressive. To get 90 minutes out of him as well, I thought was great, and I love him as a defender. But let me know if you are tempted. Let me know in the comments if you are tempted to kind of play more of a defensive back line with Van de Ven maybe playing on the left and Dragoshin coming in the centre. I'd be interested to see what you think. Before I go on to the more wide-ranging Premier League transfer news, guys, please make sure you do press that like button. Please do subscribe to the channel. I keep wanting to grow it as quickly as possible, just past the 10,000 mark. Want to get to that 15,000 subs mark. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you are a subscriber, please do spread the word. I really appreciate that. And all of you members, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. It's only £1 a month, and you're really helping me make this daily content. Description box below is how you can become a daily member. Let me know if you are as well. Really appreciate it. Anyway, on to the other Premier League transfer news, starting at Man City, and they are considering a move for Kyogo Furuhashi from Celtic, one of Big Ange Postecoglou's ex-players, for the winger position. Initial talks have taken place this week. City also want to get the Ilkay Gundogan return deal done as a priority before they bring in another winger who could potentially be Furuhashi. Liverpool are closing in on Georgi Mamadashvili from Valencia. However, the big news on this, because I reported on this yesterday, is that it might well be a £25 million initial fee plus $4 million in add-ons, but that deal would come with a potential loan for Mamadashvili, potentially to Bournemouth, although Mamadashvili wants to remain on loan at Valencia. So what Liverpool are doing here is kind of trying to sort out the future of their club in terms of the goalkeeping position, and maybe that means that Alisson will leave in the next year or two, which would be a big surprise. He's the best goalkeeper in the world, I think, but maybe he wants to have one more big move. Meanwhile, Chelsea, I mentioned this almost as a joke yesterday, but according to Sky Sport, Chelsea are planning to make a late approach for Manchester United winger Jadon Sancho, as if they don't have enough wingers. Meanwhile, Raheem Sterling and Ben Chilwell have not been included in their squad for the Conference League tie against Servette on Thursday. Sterling's considering his options, and as we reported last week, Enzo Maresca said that Ben Chilwell is free to leave the club. I know what you guys think, but I think Ben Chilwell is one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League. He has got his injury problems, but I really rate him. Maresca has said he can't play the inverted role, which kind of surprises me. I'm sure he could learn anything, but I'm really surprised that he might leave, and maybe Man United will go for him. I could see that being a move, but as an England fan, I wouldn't mind seeing Chilwell go abroad. I think he could really benefit from that. According to Sky, Chelsea are, in their words, proud of the fact that they have 42 players in their first team squad pool who have a total of 191 years remaining on their contracts. According to Sky, Chelsea's new owners are proud of that. And they're proud of having pursued a policy of signing players on long-term contracts with relatively low wages, in their words, by Premier League standards. Apparently, the average base wage of the Chelsea players that they've signed in the past 2 years is believed to be below the Premier League average of £72,000 a week. Well, I'll tell you what I think is happening here. This is a PR story. Chelsea know that they are currently a laughingstock, and they're trying to flip it and show a way where they're actually doing something that they think is sustainable in terms of the long term. But they're talking about a base wage of the players they've signed in the last 2 years being below the 72 grand a week, but that doesn't include all of the players they've got on their books. And I'm telling you, I'm so sure it's going to end in tears at Chelsea, starting with the fact that maybe by October, I think the Premier League are going to have made a decision on what punishment they'll get for historic transgressions in terms of financial fair play, where when Clearlake and Todd Bowley took over, they admitted to the Premier League that they found that Chelsea had been cooking the books under Roman Abramovich, had been financially trying to cheat the system. And because they've admitted that, there won't even be a trial, and the Premier League have said that they think by October they will have that punishment sorted, and I think it will be a lot of points. That's my prediction. Over to Everton now. They've rejected an offer from Marseille for shithouse central man Neil Maupay. The French club made a loan bid for the 28-year-old, but Everton prefer a permanent move or a loan with an obligation to buy. Fulham have now got a here we go from Fabrizio Romano from for signing Joachim Andersen from Crystal Palace. £30 million, including add-ons. Crystal Palace potentially selling both of their big centre-halves from last year in Andersen and Mark Gahey if Newcastle can get that deal over the line. Bit of a surprise. Ipswich are finalising a deal to sign Amanda Broja from Chelsea. Season-long loan deal. Salary will be covered between Ipswich and Chelsea, and the clubs are discussing a buy clause that could be mandatory. And in terms of Crystal Palace looking to replace Anderson and potentially Gahey, they've made their opening bid to sign Maxence Lacroix from Wolfsburg. £12 million plus £2 million in add-ons. Glasner wants Lacroix. That is the end of today's daily Premier League transfer news, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Press that like button. Please do press subscribe. Let's get to 15,000 subscribers. And I really appreciate you watching and listening over on the podcast platforms too. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.